Hey everybody, it's Will from Fujifilm Australia. I hope everyone can see me and hear me. Hopefully we're all good. Today we're joined by ex-photographer Russell Ord, and we're here with Neil, fielding some questions off to the side and feeding some of those through to us. I'm not kind of getting Russell's screen here now, so we'll just sort of see how we go. Russell, are you there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
You can hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there we go. Fantastic. We're super professional at this, right?
We're getting there. We're getting there.
Through a lot of tech support through today. Cool. How's everyone doing? Everyone's good? Busy? Yeah? No, not really?
No, was that to me?
Yeah,
I
to
didn't.
you. It's
I'm
only
just
you and
working
I
there.
chatting, mate.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, no, I've been pretty busy. Busy the last few weeks, and then just sort of getting over another shoulder injury. So just sort of cruising at home and doing computer work.
Yeah, right. How'd you do it? How'd you bust up your shoulder?
Dislocated surfing again. So I feel like Homer Simpson. I did it the first time and had 3 months off, and then didn't take boards up on the trip, and just for some reason thought I'd just sneak a few waves in, and it just didn't pan out that good.
Yeah, very
My
smart.
my bravery, well, my ability doesn't match my bravery, I don't think, so I'm gonna have to tone it back.
Yeah, right. Very cool. All right. I'm going to read some of your bio here and I'm going to butcher it. We'll see how we go. I struggled through it before and I'm only picking part of it because I don't want to seem less articulate than I already am. So we'll go through it real fast. So we'll go through it real quick. Okay. On his path to becoming an internationally acclaimed photographer, Russell has squinted down the lens at an intriguing mix of subjects over the years. He's shot magazine covers of world-class surfers and helped deify celebrity chefs. He's roamed with Uunguu Rangers in the Australian outback, island hopped across tropical fantasy lands, and followed his photographic instincts throughout urban meccas. Meanwhile, his ocean images are celebrated for simultaneously implying the cruelty and the majesty of the sea. Jeez, what a mouthful. So sorry if I butchered that. When you tell people what you actually do, like what you do for a job, how do you describe it? Do you just say you're a photographer, or do you blurt that out?
No, definitely don't blurt that out. That's just for reading only. It's just photographer's fine.
Yeah, fantastic. That's good. And with most of your work, so what do you do when you shoot? Are you mainly a surf photographer or an ocean photographer? How do you describe yourself? Or just as a photographer, you kind of cover all bases with these things?
Yeah, just as a photographer, I'm sort of more, people sort of associate me more with surf photography because I've been doing that for so long. However, we sort of branched out years ago when I could feel a few little changes going on. So sort of upskilled in other areas. And it's more like it's ocean. I try to stick to the ocean because I love it so much, and just work for a few brands that have that in their base, really.
Yeah, right. How important do you find it to, as a photographer, right? How important do you find it to cast your net quite wide so you are, not completely pigeonholing yourself into necessarily one thing in regards to running a business, I suppose, like to stay, functioning, head above water, paying the rent, all that sort of stuff? Or do you find you can go down one particular niche and be completely successful, as a photographer, just doing one thing or doing multiple things?
It always comes back to the ocean and shooting in and around the water for me, and because that's what I love, and I probably put more effort into that. So you can do well in a niche, but I still kind of, that breaks, I break out a little bit into workshops, but that revolves around the ocean as well, and a little bit of training is on top of that.
Yeah, right. Very cool. All right. I've got so many questions that we're sort of getting through, so I'm just going to punch through it, and we'll go off on tangents as we're getting through these anyway.
Yeah, that's fine.
So with a lot of this stuff, I actually tried myself at surf photography. I had a wedding a few years back where the groom was getting ready in the morning and he was like, oh, let's go out and get some surf images. And I failed horribly. I may have got dragged out in a current and tried to do it with a bodyboard. It was a hot mess, would be a best way to sort of put it. How important is like physical fitness in what you do, and actually, or is it just an understanding of how the ocean works rather than physical fitness, or is it a big mixture of everything, photographic skill, all that sort of stuff?
It's a mix of both, but knowledge of the ocean would be definitely up there, a good 80%, depending what you're doing. But, the kind of the water we have around here in Margaret River is heavy. Like all the locals, because they're born and bred here, are really good in the ocean, the chippies, the tradesmen, doctors, anyone. It's incredible how many good surfers are here in Margs, but they all have amazing knowledge. As long as you've got really good knowledge, you can probably get out of the situation, even if you're a little bit more unfit. And camera skills comes probably down third, really. You can learn camera skills quite quick these days, but ocean skills takes years and years of practice, as you know.
Yeah, I failed horribly. I thought I was like, I got out there. I'm like, I sent my friend who's a surf photographer. I'm like, you can go do this part. I'm not going to manage it. I'll write myself off for the rest of the day with this. It's a lot of work. I thought I was a much more confident swimmer than I actually am. So yeah, didn't do too well with it. It wasn't good. But yeah, crazy. Do you have any horror stories of like people who have been learning or any of that sort of stuff? Or when you were learning and starting out in regards to like surf, or did cameras come secondary? You've always been sort of like a surfer prior to getting into surf photography.
Yeah, I already had 15 years up my sleeve, or even 20 years up, well, feels like, yeah, maybe 15, 18 years of ocean experience before photography. So it makes it easy. You see most of the really good surf photographers, guys that are in the water, they've all got some sort of background in the ocean. They're bodyboarders, surfers, or they've grown up in and around the ocean. So that makes it a little easier. And yeah, it's definitely the hardest part to learn.
Yeah, gotcha. Why GFX? Why are you shooting GFX at the moment when, it probably makes sense to have something, faster like a XT4, or it's a bit more nimble? Why the big heavier sort of medium format?
Well, I'm still shooting with the XT3 in the water. It just depends what it is. Like, I'm going down the GFX path just because, mainly for print and seeing your images blown up big and like to scale. So, the XT3 that I'm using in the Aquatech is still nice, but you want to be able to blow it up a fair bit bigger and get up close and seeing beautiful detail, because it gives it scale then. You're putting a lot of effort in, a lot of hours in the water to get certain shots. And when you're blowing it up big, you want that wow factor. So that's why I've gone down the GFX, just for the wow factor, printing big.
Just to show off, blowing up stuff that's 3 to 4 meters larger than anyone else.
Yeah, for sure. You can definitely see the difference. And you go to exhibitions and people just like to get up close, super close. And when you're up close to these things, it's mind-boggling.
That's cool. How do you do a lot of print? What percentage of what you do and your like sort of like photographic income, I suppose, comes down to print?
No, probably 90% of it's just working for brands, and then personal work is the next 10%. So I'll concentrate on a couple of different projects and give myself sort of a few challenges through the year. And at the end of the year, or I'll try to have an exhibition surrounding that. So at the moment, I'm working on a series with just the locals, which has kind of nearly forced my hand a little bit with COVID. But it's been great because, all the guys I've surfed with over the years, the last 20 years, I'm just going to do a series on, the guys and girls that surf the same break. It's nearly a reflection of the community. It's more of a community book. So that'll go into a book on the community, and I'll probably do an exhibition with my 10 favorite images from that series as well.
It sounds awesome. Make sure you keep us involved. We would love to be part of that. It sounds amazing. With that, hold on, we're going through this. how did you get into surf photography? Like you said before, you'd obviously been doing it for 15 to 20 years before, but when did you pick up a camera and why did you pick up a camera?
Well, I didn't pick a camera up until I was like 23, 24. So I'd like to say that's 4 or 5 years ago, but that's more like 22 years ago. So it's, and I just got into it because of an injury. I did my knee surfing, and I had a few mates that were good surfers, and we borrowed their dad's camera, and I started shooting from the beach instead of sitting on the lounge. But I still wasn't really taken from it. I mean, it was the film days then, so it was a lot of learning and a lot of black and white slides I was getting back from under and over exposures and stuff. But it wasn't until I really got hold of a water housing that I started to fall in love with photography, and that's mainly because you're swimming out in the dark on your own, and it's a pretty good feeling. I think I fell in love with the feeling of photography, not so much with photography.
Yeah, sharing your particular vision and your world, because I'd imagine at that time there was less people in the water with underwater housings. It's a lot more common now, I'd imagine, comparatively to sort of when you started X amount of years ago.
There was maybe one or two here in Margaret River that was shooting back then. So, and now I don't know what it is. There's huge numbers. There's huge numbers everywhere. It's just so enjoyable. So you can't blame anyone for taking up surf photography or being in the ocean and being able to portray what's out in front of them.
Yeah, it's what they're passionate about. If you're passionate about something and you can show that through images, and you are, showing your perspective, it's always going to look different than shooting something that you're doing that isn't for love, I suppose. It's very interesting. Cool. Can you tell me about any sort of like career defining moments? Like what are the big things that you've sort of ticked off that, when you started out, you would have been thinking these are the things I want to sort of do with it? Or has it just been, a path that you've just continually done cool stuff that you've been stoked about? And yeah.
No, it's been really hit and miss. When I first started, it was all about, I was just focusing on shooting wide angle and being in the water because of the feeling of the ocean, and that's all I really wanted to do. And then I decided I wanted to, start shooting guys that were tow surfing. So I basically got a water housing for an old film camera and a 300mm. I honestly wasn't even thinking what I was doing, and then paddled out right in front of where I live now, and nearly drowned. So it was kind of things like that. And then I ended up getting a jet ski, and I just fell into right timing. Not many people were hunting, like I call them, waves of consequence. And I ended up just shooting a lot of slabs, and I just kept shooting slabs, and everything you basically shot back then made the magazine. So, there's a lot of magazines, and the demand was high for that sort of stuff. So I kind of fell into it. It's not like, I came up with this idea. And then it changed again when I broke my leg on a day, and I end up, this is going to be a long-winded story, but I end up
go for it.
being in hospital and reading a magazine that had the top 10 wildlife photos of the year. And I was going from number 10 to 1, and it was showcasing what these photographers went through to get their shots. And I'd never really even thought about it. I'd been shooting for maybe 7 years by then. I was just capturing moments, everything that moved, what the athlete did. And I was amazed at what these guys went through. And then I got to number 1, and it was this shot of a tiger. It was a beautiful shot, but then the photographer said that he'd shot it at a zoo. And I was kind of like, whoa, like, how do you compare that shot to the previous 9? I know it's a beautiful image, but the story behind it was average. But then it got me thinking what I was doing. And I was doing exactly that. I felt like, the guy sipping lemonade under an umbrella waiting for a moment, because that's basically what I was doing. So I had to kind of think what to do. And because I just got a feeling all I'm doing is capturing moments. And then I'd changed the way I shot again. I'd kind of wanted to get images that had stories like those guys, where you could look at stories and see maximum effort. And I had changed the whole way I looked at my work. And so I went down that path as well.
That's really good. It's nice to think that, the way that you're doing images now, you're not just being in the right place, right time, and you've got the camera with you. You're sort of making things happen for you. And I think that's such a big part of some of these, higher end photographers. They're making things happen. It's not just about being in the right place at the right time, although that is a huge, huge part of documentary and that sort of photography. But yeah, it is about sort of making sure you are putting yourself out there in the biggest way possible and showing your viewpoint in a unique way, I suppose. It's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I look at images exactly like that and try to imagine what the photographer was thinking or going through, and just thinking the wow factor, like I could never get that shot without this type of training. Not about pressing the trigger, just the definitely the story behind the images is really important to me, and that's how I kind of look at my work. That's how I critique my work.
Aside from the project you're working on with the locals, is there any other things, bigger sort of plans that you've got working on at the moment?
Yeah, I just started another project shooting with the GFX in the water with artificial light. So, and shooting a lot of motion, but I'd love to. I've got a couple of pics, but this shoulder injury it's not easy to carry around a GFX in the water, and then I've always got to find a second shooter with me, which is normally going to be my son. My oldest son's pretty good in the water, so he needs to hold the flash. But when you're asking people to swim out to the middle of the ocean down here in the dark, there's not many takers.
Yeah, right.
So take me son out. Take me son out. Strap a few chops to his legs.
Fantastic. Keep him away from you. Jeez.
Yeah,
Jeez. So with all this advice, so I'm hearing sort of where your story is coming from, and it is very interesting to hear you say sort of maximum effort, and these are the things that you need to go through to make yourself sort of different. I'm seeing so many photographers out there who are taking incredible like ocean images at the moment, but a lot of them you wouldn't be able to separate their work from the next person, for example. What's some advice that you would give a person, from one person to the next, to sort of make their work stand out above the crowd?
Yeah, you kind of broke up through that. I got that, just standing out above the crowd and stuff like that. It is.
Yeah.
It's. I look at it's when you can look at your work and see your own work in the images, I find quite important. And I can't always do that now either. I can look at a lot of empty wave shots and that looks like such and such, and that looks at such and such. So it's just a matter of rethinking how you do things and what you want to do. Some people just are shooting for pure enjoyment, so that's fine. But it just really depends what you're shooting for. So
Yeah,
if I'm shooting for a client, the empty waves don't even come into it. It's more, that's more my own personal work. I don't know if I answered that properly because it sort of broke up. You want me to read that?
It's quite close. No, I don't. I go through and re-answer the whole thing. No, it's I was just kind of saying, when you scroll through Instagram, for example, and I'm sure you get it because you get a curated feed these days. So the more that you look at something, obviously they cater the feed to you. But I was saying, how do you make your work stand out when a lot of images do look quite similar from one person to the other? How do you sort of elevate it? And you answered it in the way that you sort of put that question out. You were just saying, put more of yourself into it and your unique perspective, I think, is sort of what I was getting out of it, what you have to take to it and try and make, when someone looks at an image, end goal is obviously to make them think that's one of Russell Ord's images, or this is this person's images. You want that sort of, or Warren Keelan's. You want people to associate that type of work with you and a high quality of work or a caliber of work. So you answered it. It's fine. Coastline Awards. Tell me about those.
Yeah, that's part of the magazine, the Coastline magazine. So we're going to run the awards for the next 6 months. So it's like, at the moment, we've got a whole heap of different judges. So I'm one of them. So I'm brute, I kind of virtually said how I look at images, and that's how I look at everyone. So I look at an image real quick, and if I just see a moment, that's just going to just swipe until I see something, holy shit, that's super creative, or I can imagine how hard that was to take. But the major winner is going to be a combination of about 3 of the 6 categories. So it's not like a fluke. You can't just be good at one thing. You would have to be good at least of 3. I wanted to get it 5 out of the 6, but after having discussions with crew, we brought it down to 3 out of the 6 categories. And it should be interesting. There's been a couple of really good entries so far, but I can imagine a lot of people are going to enter the awards towards more the back end when they've, because it's got to be shot in this year. And you'll know what you have getting closer to the end. But no, it's exciting, and it's just good being part of the magazine and working with some really good crew like Tim Baker, the writer, and Rachel Tilley. She's just come on board as the like an assistant to Tim, and she just finished uni and stuff, and she was actually world champ longboarder. Super cool, and it's not a clickbait website. It's more like, just good quality content, and that allows me, when I'm on the road, to do other things. I might be working for a brand, but then I might want to do a shoot with some character on the road, and I've got a place to put it. So I'm pretty excited to be a part of that.
If you're explaining it, just so everyone else understands sort of what we're talking about off the top, it's an award / blogs. What is Coastline, if you were sort of explaining it across to everybody here? Because I think we kind of just took off on a tangent.
Oh, yeah. Well, the Coastline is a magazine, online magazine, and the awards is a section of that. So the magazine is just online at the moment. We'll probably look at doing one coffee table book run a year of the best quality work, because it's still nice to see your stuff in print. And the awards is it's just a section of the magazine, basically. So you guys, the Fuji's, are throwing in a few cameras as well, which is awesome.
Shameless plug.
Yeah, big plug. And hopefully we'll have a few monthly awards coming up. We're still sort of negotiating with a few companies, so it's good. And it's just a way for photographers to be judged by other photographers as well. You're not getting judged by a magazine editor. You're getting, judged by Ted Grambo and Mickey Smith, just to name 2 of them. We've all got a different perspective on work. I find a lot of competitions out there they're judged by maybe a magazine editor that I don't think they're really, some are good, but I'm not going to bag all magazine editors.
I was waiting for you to do it there. I was waiting for you to stick your foot in it, and it was recorded and on the internet for forever. Headlines, Russell Lord says magazines are... No, it's good. It's good. I agree with you completely.
I don't know what they're looking at.
I think you do need those. I think you do need those type of people judging photographic awards. There's no point in having a graphic designer, even though they do have an eye for some things, having them handle the entirety of a photo awards. You want components of it, or you maybe have 5 or 6 people across multiple different areas, but you want someone who is at the top of the field judging your work, so you get correct feedback and constructive criticism in a way that could sort of possibly help you, rather than just here's a score, or you won or you didn't win, this is why. It's very, very important. So from the type of photography you do now, when you started out to sort of where you are now, what advice would have you given yourself sort of starting out when you were going through all this? Or if there was someone starting from scratch now, for example, that is doing a lot of this stuff, because I do know a lot of people who are doing surf photography and who maybe just have it as a hobby, or may aspire to go further down the track or make photography a full-time career. What would you be telling them to sort of like benefit yourself? Or even if you were telling yourself this 20 years ago?
For me, I would have told myself to shoot way more lifestyle than I did. Like, I was always concentrating so heavily at being in the water because I enjoyed it so much. I very rarely shot, the last thing I wanted to do was shoot lifestyle. And, because I'd been, swim for 6 hours, and then I was just too buggered, really. Whereas now my approach is, like, if I'm doing a job for, say, a magazine or a brand, I go there and I have, all these things I've got to tick the boxes. And then once I've started doing that, I can branch out to, like, I want to get that shot, which is difficult because I know I've already got certain amount of work under my belt. but definitely lifestyle, because the lifestyle changes. And I see that, like, really good images of people that shoot climbing and stuff. They had, really beautiful action shot, but they had beautiful lifestyle as well. And
Helps
so
tell.
that's what I did do. I didn't tell a story.
Yeah, that's it. It helps tell that larger story, doesn't it? Like, if you're just focusing on just in the water, you're only focusing on such a small component of what, being a surfer or a skateboarder or whatever it is. There's so much behind the scenes that goes into it rather than just that one pivotal moment. It's so important.
Exactly.
So important. Cool. That's a really good answer, Russell. It's like you had that one pre-planned. No, you didn't. You haven't seen any.
No, there's no pre-planning.
No, that's it. It's good. Prior to photography and making photography a full-time career, what were you doing?
Well, in my early days, my whole focus was being a rugby league player. All I wanted to do was play rugby league. I was full on to sports, never into schoolwork. So I left school I think I got to year 10, borderline year 10. And and then I was a screen printer for the president of the rugby league club owned a screen printing business. So I did basically a trade in screen printing, but it all revolved about playing rugby league. And then that kind of started taking off back just prior to Super League days. I'm going back quite a few years now, and then end up getting in the fire brigade quite young at 20. So I quit the rugby league. Well, it's a long story. I did it for a lot longer and ended up going to Adelaide and coming back. But basically, I was a fireman and then took up photography at the same time when I did the injury, and then probably did both for maybe 13 years, and the last 6 is just photography. So I ended up doing like 19 years as a fireman and loved it, but I had to choose between photography and being in the fire brigade, because you just didn't have enough time for family really in the end. And I just felt I'd go down the photography route and just went for it.
More rewarding?
No, not really. Not more rewarding. There's different challenges. Like, it's pretty rewarding being a fireman. Like, and I've only just caught up with a few of the guys just the other night, and we're just talking about this. They asked me, "Do I ever think about going back there?" And I do, but only in moments of what I'd call struggle, where I'm like having a bad week, or nothing's going right with clients, or money, you could call them money problems and stuff. It's not easy running your own business, and that's the only ever time I think about it. When everything's flowing and going well, I never think about going. So that's probably not why I should try to get back in. I never would anyway, not at my age. But no, I wouldn't say more rewarding. It's just different challenges, your own boss. I've got, your lifestyle's worth a lot. And there's one of the big reasons I did get out of the fire brigade is I sort of I did see how life can end so quickly. You can be a young girl going to uni and your life gone like that in a car accident and stuff like that. So that had a bit of effect on me. And to make sure you live your life, because it can end quickly. I don't really plan for in the future because of experiences in the fire brigade. So I sort of go for it. I don't know if I'd tell everyone to just leave their job and go for it. You need to just think as your job as the hobby, and your photo, your second job, that's propping up your photography and ease you into it. And then you've got to have a partner that wants to back your decisions. Like, if you're married, I was married with 3 kids when I did this. And so you're dropping a fairly hefty wage, a good wage in the scheme of things, that you don't need to make it up, because your lifestyle changes, and your lifestyle is worth a lot, and you only live once.
Yeah, 100%. How much do you think, because I know personally from my experiences, how much do you think, being in the fireys and, all those risks that you've taken as a kid where you were learning to surf, or I was saying this to my partner the other day, all these risks that you take as a child and all these things that you do when you're learning, and all these little rules that you break change the way that you sort of do a lot of things, or the risk versus reward in what you do. So someone going out taking photos and doing what you do, you're 9 out of 10 times going to put yourself in a position of danger to get a better image than maybe someone who doesn't have that same level of trying to find a way to word this very well. But if you get where I'm coming from, your
Yeah, I get it.
ability of risk and what you would consider a hard image to get, your boundary is much higher than someone else, you know, who might be just starting out with surf photography, for example. You'll put yourself in those positions. Do you think your life and your choices being a fireman, or, you know, doing surf photography on breaks that are like this far off rock, that completely changes what sort of risks you'd take to sort of get a shot?
Yeah, I get it, but it's I don't see it like that. It's preparation and time in the water, and it's exactly like being a fireman. When you first start out, you'd think it's risky, but you know, you're getting a lot of training and you're getting mentored by a lot of senior firemen that have got, you know, all that knowledge on what to do in certain situations. And it's the same thing. My boundaries in the water, obviously, let's just compare me to you after your story at the start, is a lot different. And I know exactly what they are, and I push my boundaries, but my boundaries are really high because I've been in, like, I live in Margaret River. I'm right on the beach here in front of, you know, 15-foot waves. I can experience that quite daily. It's not like it's pretty. I mean, the kids here, you'd think they're crazy, but it's not crazy. It's preparation and time in the water. And then, yeah, I'll push my boundaries as well, but it's definitely preparation and knowing what you can and can't do. It's more preparation than risk management of your own. I don't know. Do you kind of understand?
Yeah, no, I completely get it. It's you built it up for so long that you have that skill set that it's no longer a risk to you, or you don't conceive it as a risk anymore.
Yeah, but I do see photographers that, you know, and I've seen a few stories in the past where it's complete risk. It's risk versus the instant reward. There's no one makes it overnight. There's no such thing. Everybody you see and everything they've done that 10,000 hours, and there's a lot of experience. That's the thing. Like, it takes time. This is not like an overnight success. I had 15 years of being in the ocean before I picked up a camera, and now I've got 35 years or 38 years of ocean experience, and you know, a lot of that's been in heavy waves. And I surf myself. I'm quite. It's when people jump steps. Surfers do it all the time. Like, they get a jet ski and they get hold of the rope, and all of a sudden they're a big wave surfer. But they didn't build up to that, and they get in trouble when you know, shit happens. They really get affected because they haven't gone through the life skills. Like, there's a good surfer on the south coast that I worked with when he was a Grom, Russ Björk, and his old man said, no, there's no towing, and he was paddling with a couple of really good guys like Brett Bertrand, Paul Morgan, crazy big wave surfers, but they built up to that. And so he's built up, and now he would be regarded as one of the best wave surfers in the world, but he's earned that. And because he's young, people think, oh, that's an overnight success. It's not. He's been doing that since day dot, and his dad's given him a lot of teaching. So you've got to really look into the back end of what people go through. It's not, it takes time. And I think because everything's instant now, people are like, I need to do this to get this recognition. No one really cares in the end. You've kind of got to make sure you do it for the right reasons and mitigate the risk through preparation.
It's a really good answer. It's good. I think a lot of people get hurt when they jump into things or try and blow up really fast, which is, I think, in the world of instant gratification, I think it's a very interesting thing. Everyone wants the short, quick way, don't they?
Yeah, it's like I'm still doing a few little risky things. Like, I've broken my leg, but I can put that back to more like stupidity, really, taking my eyes off the ocean. You know, I've dislocated my shoulder twice already. So there is damage, but I can also be able to get in if I really had to through that through those circumstances. So, you're still going to go through things, but, I'm doing breath hold courses and all sorts of stuff to be able to do this, to go to these levels.
Yeah, that's cool. I've always wanted to do free diving. It looks amazing to have that sort of skill set. It would be very interesting. I've just got my scuba ticket, so I've wanted to expand what I can do, but yeah, I don't really have that skill set, and it's kind of terrifying to me. So yeah. You have something new in your kit recently. You got some housings that are made up. Are you able to show us some?
I've got the I've got the Aquatech housing first. This is fully kind of like can you see this?
Yeah.
The X series. So this is what I use with the XT3, and the Aquatech have just, I'm giving a little plug, but they've just done a new switch, which is super cool. Like, it nearly feels like a camera, like, the 2-stage thing. So I'm pretty pumped on that. And I'll use that a lot more so when I can't really miss the shot and I'm working for a brand and it's sports and stuff like that. And then I've also gone the GFX, which should be in the water right now if I wasn't injured.
That is a monster.
That is a monster for the GFX from Dave Kelly with the medium format. So, and then that goes with the flash.
Yeah, for
somehow,
the AD200.
Those work together. I've got to figure it out.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so it is interesting, and I had a quick play with it prior to busting the wing, and it feels really good. It's just, and you get it on the big screen, and you're like, oh, geez, these details are pretty good. You get addicted to it. You don't really. Sometimes I don't need to shoot for it because I'm shooting for a client that's putting their stuff on social, basically.
Give them 102 megapixels.
Yeah, give them 102. So I pull it out when I'm working for clients that are still printing big and stuff. So it's getting a little bit more rare, but personally for me, it's nice. And you think more. People are, oh, you can't use this, you can't do that. There's always workarounds. Even with you just press the trigger at the right time. Okay, it's not shooting like XT4 rate, but it's you just think, you probably think more as well. It's kind of like the old film days. You're not pressing the trigger until you think you've got it, because every time you press the trigger, it costs you money.
It's a luxury of it these days. I remember when mirrorless first became a thing, that would have been considered very fast, and that's only 5-6 years ago that sort of mirrorless had taken off in this sort of way, and now we're more than that, probably about 8, somewhere around that. But we're at this point now where it's becoming a luxury because cameras are so good and so fast, and the autofocus is there. It is making things easier and easier for us. But nothing. The thing that will never be taken away from a photographer is sort of the same thing that you said: the 10,000 hours and the skill and the the life lessons and all that sort of stuff that does go into it. That is so much more important than what camera you're physically holding in your hand.
Yeah, definitely. I see people's studio work and super creative and think, how are they doing that? And I don't think, people, so many, you've got to justify your purchases, but they like, oh, what camera do you use? It doesn't really matter, depending what they can get caught up in it. I use the X100V more than any other camera because it's tiny. I've got it with me. I put it in the car, I've got it in my pocket and things like that. And, that gets used more than anything. And, it's great for clients as well, because I do this thing if I can't take my wife, because she's so really good with people, I've had to learn the skill over time. I'll just take the X100 and I'll just say, look, I'm practicing, because I just want to get them at work or doing, going back to their normal life. And, you pull this little camera out and they go and do it, and you shoot away and they go, oh, I'm ready to go now. And I'm like, well, I've finished the job, I'm
going to pull back away from this. It feels like we're selling our product way too hard when it's meant to be about you a bit more than this. But yeah, we'll come off for a second. I don't want it to feel like we're doing an infomercial for our product, because we're preaching to the converted in here a little bit, I believe. But recently you're part of a documentary. Can you tell me a bit about it? Because that's in Singapore at the moment, or it was just being streamed at a festival?
Oh, it's been streamed. I don't know where it's been streamed now, I mean, it's on Red Bull. So Red Bull have got it. And the oneshotdoco.com is in Australia. I think ABC are just about finished with it in Australia. I'm not too sure. Darren McKay, who's a producer, sort of has all that in his bag. I don't really pay attention because it came out quite a few years ago. But basically it was Darren's project. I met him on the beach and he wanted to shoot. He'd only just come out from the mines. He picked up all this video gear and I met, and I told him I was doing this little project, and he goes, "Can I shoot it for a clip?" And then just blew out of proportion, and it became this doco. So it's cool to look back on, and it's good to show the kids and stuff like that. So, but it's done well. Darren did an amazing job, and he's an incredible video guy too. So he's gone on to bigger and better things and getting employed to shoot documentaries and stuff like that. So it was incredible for him.
Yeah, sure.
Stoked for him.
That's super exciting. It's nice when that sort of work gets really put out there and promoted in the way that it should be, because there's not as much stuff as should be coming out of Australia in this particular vein anyway. I'm going to quickly go off some questions. So we'll have some people questions because I don't think they want to hear me ramble too much more, but we can get some answers going through. Bear with me 1 second. So we've got a few sitting in our chat at the moment because the ones coming through. Neil, are you able to quickly check? I'm not having those ones come through that we're sending before. Yeah, you can resend it through. That's okay. Hey, Russell, whatever happened to the boat adventure you were going to do?
Geez, this is the longest story of my life. We went to New Zealand and we expected the boat, and things just didn't go right. It just didn't turn up. I think it started off like that, where the boat was meant to come out from Australia, and we sold up, we did everything. We went to New Zealand, we waited, and then there was just too many mishaps and it didn't turn up. And that was kind of nearly life-changing in a way, because a lot of things happened. I'd given up a lot of work here at home where my brand is situated, and I had to start again from scratch in New Zealand for 18 months. And it just happened the kids had enough and they wanted to come back, and we're back at home now in Margaret River. But it was let's just call it a mishap.
Yeah, right.
I don't know how it would have gone in the end, but we definitely planned for the boat. It's just that the captain didn't show up. Let's just say the captain didn't show up.
Yeah, right. I actually like this question because I think it's kind of this got sent to me privately, I believe. I don't know how this happened, but what has been your most commercially successful photo and why? And this is quite an interesting one because it could be a million different reasons to why it was commercially successful, or if you were shooting for a company or a brand, I suppose, or an agency, for example, or your own, I suppose, one that you're putting out there as Russell Lord Photography.
Oh, that's a tough one. I've never even thought about anything like that before. I don't know if it's commercially. I did a one-off shot once for a client in England. They were after a certain wave with motion and stuff like that. So I went and did that, and I sold that as a one-off image. So no one else got that. Sold it. Obviously, they had to get it printed. Shot that with medium format way back in the day, and so that did pretty well as a one-off. That's more like for a client, probably a good paying job for one photo. So I could probably go down that path. All the rest of them, it's a tough one. I don't know if one's really just what we just say, that it's just gone crazy and sold over again.
Doesn't have to necessarily be selling, but maybe something for a campaign, for example, that was used for a big, large campaign that was around for a while, or anything like that.
Yeah, there's been a lot of shots for tourism they've used, especially overseas. You don't see it, and then all of a sudden someone will flick you a shot of a billboard in Japan, and it's your shot. But that's pretty good. So you don't see that stuff because you're just shooting for the client. They've got the images and all, and you've negotiated terms and conditions, and all of a sudden the image is there. And so that's pretty good. It's good when people do that. They say, "Oh, is this one of your shots?" And I was like, "Where's that?" just to make sure I haven't been ripped off at all.
Yeah, it's a monster billboard somewhere that you didn't know about.
Yeah. Geez, I thought they bought that for social.
Very good. Okay, Neil sent me his to-do list, so we got a bunch of questions here. Okay. Hey Russell, you mentioned that you cut your teeth shooting film. Do you still use film? Do you shoot? Oh, here we are. Do you still shoot film? Did shooting film draw you towards Fujifilm's film simulations? And do you apply what you learned from shooting film to the digital world when picking your shots?
Definitely apply it. Like, think about before pressing the trigger. I've still got a film camera. My son uses it, so he's sort of dabbling in it, and it's a good way to teach him to think about it if he has to pay for film and how many shots he's going to take, so he's not putting his finger on the trigger. I tend not to shoot anymore on film. I don't really need to. I don't have the clients that want it. I would if I had a client that wanted to shoot film. What was the other part of that question? For the film, did I go to Fujifilm because of it? No, not at all. I didn't. That was a bonus when I went to Fujifilm and I realized they had those film simulations. They were pretty nice.
Yeah, it's very good. It's nice to have everything sort of in camera and look really nice straight on the back of the camera if you are working with a client, rather than something that just looks flat or a bit boring. Cool. What specs on the GFX are most useful to your work?
Just the file sizes, definitely, because it's all about printing big. So is that what you kind of mean?
Yeah, I think it's just what specs on the GFX. So probably the 102 megapixels, right?
Yeah, definitely.
All the megapixels.
It is nice. Even when you're editing on the computer, it's pretty crazy when you're blowing it up to 100%. You still, it's mind-boggling. It still blows me away.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we got another one from Ollie. Ollie is from the UK. He lives in Cornwall, apparently the UK surf capital. I know nothing about this, so I'm just regurgitating information. But apparently it's the surf capital of the UK, and he's a really keen surfer himself. He is a full-time photographer for events, property, products, and his dream is to work with surfing brands and pro surfers for their advertising or sport photography. He also has a wide variety of drones to get aerial shots for clients. What's the best route to get into the surfing business?
Well, he's in the right spot over there.
Long-winded there. The actual question was, this guy has a lot of equipment and he has been working and he wants to be a surf photographer. What would be the best route to getting into the surfing business?
I would just start local where he is in Cornwall, because it is, I haven't been there, but I know Bo Young Surfboards, he's going there soon to do a shaping thing when he can travel. So I'd be reaching out to like local surf shops or brands there and just work your way up. I think a lot of people want to go, I just want to go and shoot pros straight away and work for this brand and this brand, where you could actually tap into local brands, and there's a lot of benefit in doing that because you can create personal relationships straight away, instead of trying to sell yourself on social, because you can get lost there. Personal relationships locally would be where I started. That's how I started here. I didn't try to shoot over anyone's shoulder that was shooting professionally. I started with the local board riders and created relationships with them. And then some of those kids got bigger and better and got sponsors. And because I was shooting with them, I sort of grew with it. And, this might have took 7 years. It took 5 years before I even got in a magazine. So don't rush and just look locally.
Yeah, that's a great answer. That's good. How deep have you gone underwater, and what was your favorite shot when shooting underwater? So less on top of, your wave breaks and more sort of under the water.
I've free dived to 29 meters, which doesn't sound much. That was when I was training, and that was fully relaxed and worked up to that. And I'll tell you what, it sounds deep, but you compare that to proper free divers. These guys are going down a long way, shooting fish and having a party down there. I was ready to come back up. So it's nothing. I probably wouldn't get there now. I haven't been free diving that much. And favorite shots is more like behind the wave of athletes going through. I just think that's pretty special on some of the shapes of the, the wave and stuff like that. I still try to get those type of shots.
On that same tangent of free diving, how long can you hold your breath?
I can hold my breath not that long, like 4 minutes on a static, which is not really that long. But that's not really what you're trying to get in surfing. It's like, how long can you hold your breath under pressure, with anxiety, with getting flogged, and that's kind of what you want to. It's not the 4 minutes. It's kind of like if you were to swim 50 meters and sprint back, and then you train with someone putting you underwater and stuff like that. How long can you last before you freak out? That's more important with the surf thing, because a lot of guys might be able to do a static for longer than me, but then they get a wave on the head and they're freaking out. So it's more like high heart rate stuff. And I've done a lot of stuff with went absolutely One Ocean International. So with Joe Knight, and he's an incredible trainer. So it's more like breath holds with high heart rate. Not free diving is more like breathing up and doing a proper dive. Like, you're not doing a 28-meter dive after ducking under a few waves. That's for sure.
Smashed around. It's a bit more controlled. Yeah. Both Neil and I lost it when you said not long. When you said 4 minutes, I'm like, no, that is so long. I get done in a bathtub for longer than that. All right, cool. Here we go. How deep? Blah blah blah. I've really enjoyed your black and white portraits of locals and work through the COVID times in WA. Really enjoyed the one shot. Anything else in the pipeline in regards to sort of this same sort of work? And that was from Glenn. He wants to know if you've got anything coming along similar to one shot.
I'm not doing another documentary. I'm not doing one shot, but I'm definitely doing a community book. So out from those portraits, because that was more like when COVID hit and you kind of holy shit, what am I going to do? Because I had 3 major jobs all overseas. I mean, I'm not going to play the violin. Everyone's going through tough times. So, but just decided to work locally, concentrate on my portrait. Someone saw it, and then we're going to do a book with those portraits and a little bit of ocean stuff. So I've teamed up with a writer and Scott Print, and we're going to hopefully have the book ready by November. So it's super cool project, because normally, I'm shooting just empty waves, and it's good to be able to go out and meet people and hear their stories, because that's kind of what I'm passionate about now.
A lot of text with it, with what you're putting in, to put a bit of background in there?
Yeah, there's text. It's not really a history of Margaret River. It's more story based. So you might have 3 or 4 pages of images and then a story from a local. And the good thing about at Margaret River, it's really, really a reflection of the community. Like I normally surf with the early morning crew, great bunch of guys, but you've got doctors, chippies, like lawyers, and then they just scatter back into the community, and it's really a reflection. It's a community book.
Yeah, gotcha. Cool. I think we're nearly out of questions. We've got a couple more that we'll sort of go through that have just popped up. What is the heaviest thing you've seen in the ocean out shooting? So I assume by heavy they mean gruesome or full on.
Mainly like down at the right, it's heavy, but I've been pretty good in that situation, because you train for that. Like probably Paul Patterson going down on a wave. It probably was down for nearly a minute. You see a lot of videos where crews say, I've been down a minute. That's bullcrap. Like, I've been there on certain situations. I've been down there like 20 seconds, but Paul Patterson, the scary part was with him. It was only me and Darren, the filmer, who did one shot, and Paul and his tow partner. So, yeah, but anyone else, I would have died for sure. But Paul, it kind of taught me a few lessons on preparation and just how prepared he was to go through that and hear his story of feeling the oxygen running out of his hands and legs and then everything, but still being calm. Like, it was mind boggling. Yeah. Like, and Paul's, I think he's come second in the Eddie. Like, he can surf big waves. So he had and it sort of showed what you need to do to be able to survive that sort of stuff. So that'd probably be the heaviest. And there's been, lots of things like that. I remember I rescued a guy at Mavericks who, in California, that I ended up resussing on the beach. So that was pretty heavy. That was a heavy situation. And he ended up surviving with, there's a lot of things. It wasn't just me, it was a lot of people involved that made for that guy to survive. He had a lot of luck.
That's crazy. This one's actually a really good one, because I think this is, personally to me, I think most photographers are creatives. They never get into photography as a job to make money in this way, or don't understand how to run a business in this way. So Sarah O'Flanagan asks, what's the hardest thing about running your own photography business, and the best thing? So the two different things there.
The best thing is it allows me to have the lifestyle I love. So that's definitely the best thing. The hardest thing is the business side of things and dealing with clients and just knowing how to run a business. But I'm pretty lucky, like my wife does all that. So I pretty much just sit back and take photos and edit, and that's all I do. So
she runs the business.
She runs all the business, the tax, the everything, like contracts, the whole lot. But it's really, I'd say when you're starting out is get good at business, but ask photographers. Like I'd give anyone who asks my rates and stuff, this is what I charge, because you don't want to, what I see is, especially in the surf photography world, is a lot of people get into it and then they create a standard that you actually can't live off, and then they can't live off. Yes, you got to build your name. Try to think of ways to build it without working for free with, brands that would normally pay for, because you have a product that someone loves. So it's worth something. Okay, you might not have that name that you think you should have to be able to charge more, but you have what they require. So you can charge a brand or a company. Like, you working for free or for a $10 watch, you're creating a standard that you could never live off. And in the end, you'll never be a photographer. And you see that people come in and out all the time. It's just getting a little bit more wise with business. That's the hardest thing. It's a bit I would struggle with without my wife. And then I've got Celeste Walker, who helps me with marketing. This is only fresh this year with Celeste, because I've never done marketing and I want to start, branching up to a few different levels.
Yeah, for sure. As I said, I think a lot of photographers get in and they don't understand rates and they don't understand tax and GST and all these things that go into what is required to run a business, and accounting and all these things that come into it. And you really need to put it into a big pool and find out what you are actually earning from that $500 job that you may be taking, that really breaks down to be $300 after your tax and your GST and all that. And is your time really worth $300 after you've put in 40, 50 hours making sure a client's happy? It's about making sure your worth.
Yeah. And you can, because you enjoy it so much at the start, you're willing to do that sort of stuff. And, your other job might be propping it up, but just remember your future. If you do want to move into full time, you don't want to be creating that standard you can actually not live to. Like, you can't eat off that. You can't even pay your rent. So you're
doing a lot of jobs for $300 if you need to sort of live off it. It's quite crazy, and then you end up. Taxman's always got their hand out with these sort of stuff. Cool. I think we're going to have to wrap it up because questions keep coming in a minute. We'll do one or two more and that'll be it. And one of them is going to be mine. So sorry. Was there a point where you were confident enough to go pro with photography? What was the turning point when you sort of knew? And I think you kind of half answered this before anyway, when you were from the Fireys and you had that sort of turning point where you decided to go full-time in photography. So I think that's kind of answered. Was there a point where you knew you were financially able to go pro? I think is sort of probably the best way to put it. did you reach a point where you knew you were comfortable enough and you thought you could do it, and obviously had a chat with the partner about it?
Yeah, well, it's a kind of a hard question, because it's like there was sacrifices as well. Like, you're dropping, let's just say, 90 grand from the fire brigade. It's not like I wasn't in the mindset of I had to make that up. It's more like I got to change my lifestyle so we can live off the photography. And, at that time it was going well, but photography changes all the time. And, that's one thing I do struggle with. I have to really, look at my mindset on the struggles. Like, you can have 3 weeks of unbelievable, because I like to be, if I think I'm not busy, I'm sort of not succeeding. So it's like, and then you've got to think of other ideas, how to keep ahead of the times and things like that. But to answer the question, it wasn't really a money thing. It was more like a lifestyle, and I had my wife supported that, so it was good. Otherwise I'd still be there for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I guess because this is a question about sort of money again, funnily enough. How do you know how much your time is worth, and how do you set your rates when you're starting out?
Well, you don't really know, to be honest. I think you need to ask. You need to ask people that have been in the industry and get a hand. So if you reach out to enough people, when I first started, no one would tell you anything, like in surf, especially in surf photography. But I had Eric and Ian Regnard really help me with business. So they're more like mentors to me business wise. And they explained it. This is what your images are worth. This is how you charge. And so and they were really happy to do that. And I'm happy to do that with people as well. I think if you go in there and think, oh, that's cool, it's $100, but it's probably worth a lot more depending on what the company's using it for and stuff like that. So I think just, really focus on your photography, but really focus on your business side, and just ask people. Ask photographers that have been, and you'll get a feeling if they're telling you the truth and they're doing that as well. Like, a lot of photographers might say, I do this and this, and they're not really. They're just like, I'm happy to share my rates. This is what I charge. But do I get that every time? No. Sometimes it comes down to negotiation and education, and I'm lucky my wife's good at dealing with that. I've kind of been black banned from a few meetings, so it's like, what are you kidding? Yeah. But and because you don't really know what you're worth, what's anyone worth? It's because it is time. There's a lot of equipment and a lot of time goes into it.
Yeah, for sure. It's not even about the equipment; it's about your skill. They're buying you; they're not buying equipment with this sort of stuff. No one's getting Russell Lord purely for that. Well, hopefully it's because he's got a brand new GFX 100 that he wants to promote. But no, it's they're buying you for your skill set. They're never buying you for just particularly that part. My question's the last one. It's going to be, how do you deify a celebrity chef? I'm curious off your bio. You had that in there.
What's DFI stand for?
I have no idea. You have it in your bio, mate. I'm trying to figure it out.
Define. Was it define, or do you DFI it?
Deify. So I'm pretty sure.
I don't know. I've worked with a few chefs here in Margaret River, and they've come over here, so it's been good. They're an interesting bunch. They're different, that's for sure.
Yeah, Neil's just done a Google on what DFI means, and it says to, what is it? Worship or regard as a god, apparently. So that's why I was questioning it. There you go.
I think a few chefs do think that's what they are. I won't name them, but I won't even. I've got a little story. Like, we're doing this shoot, and I was getting the shits with it because they weren't playing the game, and it's difficult. It was a really difficult shoot, and I ended up saying to one of their managers, I just said, look, because I wanted this guy to take his jacket off, because it was just like it just didn't work. Everyone else is wearing whites or blacks or whatever, and don't you know who this guy is? I didn't have a clue. I didn't read them. I don't really care. It's been about being a good person and stuff like that. And I just said, look, do you realise this guy cooks a mean steak? He's not curing cancer. Like, come on. Oh, she's freaking out. I thought, here I was going to get booted off the set and stuff like that. Because I just feel people need to respect people for, doesn't matter what they do. Everyone's got a story, That's, in the end, all I'm doing is pressing the trigger on the camera. I'm no different than anyone else. Anyone can do it. It just takes time and in any occupation.
Yeah, for sure. We'll wrap it up. There's so many little questions. Every time I'm like, we'll wrap it up, another question comes through. But I'll call it there. We can answer a few more of these. If you would be kind enough to respond to the one or two we didn't get to, we'll copy paste them at the end, and you can possibly respond if you're feeling very kind, Russell. But I really appreciate you. It's been good hearing your story. I really appreciate it. It's always nice to hear someone else's perspective and how they've come into photography, or whatever sort of roads they've taken to get to the point that they're in now. It's always a long road. You never get there quick.
No, thanks for having me. It is. I mean, everyone's got a story, no matter what they do. So it's just kind of looking into it and seeing where they come from, which is always pretty important.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We really appreciate it. If there was anything technical that we can answer, we'll answer it in there, and I'll send a couple of messages to Russ after this. But thanks for your time, people. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Russ.
No worries. Do you want me to leave or?
You can go. You can leave.
I'm not sure what
you can leave. We'll start copying and pasting some of these questions that we didn't get to. Yeah, cool.
No, thanks for people that turned up too. I appreciate the time. No, I enjoyed that. It's amazing how the world's changed, isn't it? This is what you're doing.
Mental. You're on the other side of the world. We probably wouldn't have even considered this, 6-9 months ago. Mental.
No, not at all. Everyone needs to make change at the moment, but we'll all get through it.
We will. All right. Thanks for your time, Russell. It's probably dinner time there now for you.
It's takeout night for me. My daughter's doing jiu-jitsu, and so when she does jiu-jitsu, we get takeout.
Yeah, sick. All right.
Easy one. See you later.
Right.
Thanks
for
having me.